Angelique Adams, and I love your title because it's a leadership development strategist and advisor focusing on innovators. Now, that goes over your head. You're a scientist who makes other scientists really progress in the field of leadership. How did you even get started? Because I don't think I would have ever thought about that in college as a career field. You started out as a scientist.
Yeah, absolutely. I started out as a scientist, and very early on in my career, I raised my hand and said, I think I want to be a manager. And it's kind of rare for scientists to raise their hand to be in leadership, but I did, and I had mentors who really encouraged me to do so. And so as soon as I took on my first leadership role, I thought, okay, I'm finally doing the thing that I think I was really meant to do. And so I was a leadership, continued to grow my leadership, bigger teams. And then just actually a few years ago, I realized, you know what, I've been in innovation, I've been in research and development for over 20 years, but the part that I have really loved the most about my career is actually helping the scientists and engineers develop in their career and become leaders. And so that's when I decided to really focus on that.
Okay, as a woman in STEM, I love to see, I love this part because we talk so much about getting girls into STEM and getting in the labs and doing all the STEM things, but leadership is a part of that in this field. So take us back to college, take us back to what did you even study and what was your original path going to be?
Okay, so I'm what I call an accidental engineer. So my dad was in the military, so I moved around all over the world. All of my role models were soldiers. So my doctor was a soldier, my dentist was a soldier, my teachers were the wives of soldiers. And so I very much lived in a bubble, and I really didn't have a clue about what I wanted to be when I grew up. But I wanted to go to college because I knew that if I went to college, unlike my parents at the time who went to college later, I knew that I would have a more secure financial future. So we were in Germany when I was in high school for part of it, when we came stateside, and I started kind of thinking about college. I went on a couple of college tours, and a 20-year-old college student was giving me a tour and just offhandedly said, if you're good at math and science, we have scholarships in engineering. And I said, maybe that's how I can pay for college. And so I applied to Penn State and got a scholarship in engineering. At the time, U.S. News and World Report, they have a list of salaries, and chemical engineering was at the top of that list. And so I said, okay, let's do it.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's practical. It's practical.
It's very practical. And so that's what I did. And I did some undergraduate research, again, to help pay for my college expenses when I was a junior. And again, a very typical college experience. I had somebody from a company who comes and gives pizza to college kids, as a recruitment activity. I was sitting next to the person who was paying for my pizza, and I was telling him about my undergraduate research. And he said, if you're willing to keep doing that for graduate school, we'll pay for it. And so that's how I ended up getting a PhD and started my 20-year career with Alcoa.
What was it like the early years being a young woman in a STEM field?
I was the only one. I was always the only one, and honestly, I've been pretty much the only one most of my career. I don't know that I knew any different. I think it was I just had this mindset of, I want to go to college, I want to be successful, I want to come out and be financially secure. I really just put my head down and focused on the work. There were support systems available to me that I took advantage of. So there was a minority engineering program where I went, and so actually the woman who was leading that really took me under her wing because she knew that I was just completely clueless. And so about how to be a professional and what professional women look like out in the real world. Again, soldiers were my only frame of reference. And so not only did she help me kind of academically to get the support I needed, but she really helped me kind of become an adult in the workforce and really understand how to navigate social situations, how to dress, how to put on makeup. I mean, all of those things. I was very fortunate to have people who just kind of maybe saw something in me and were willing to go the extra mile to help me.
So what was your first job in STEM?
So my first job was an internship at an oil and gas company, a company called Texaco. I'm not sure they exist anymore. And hard hat, steel-toed boots, going out into the field and taking measurements and things like that. And I loved it. I really have always loved being out in the field, and my entire career has been in manufacturing. And so really seeing how the stuff gets made has always been something I've been really interested in.
how did you figure out, you know what, I'm really good at leadership? I know you said you raised your hand when you figured out, okay, I've done the research, I've done this portion,
Yeah.
but I see something bigger.
Let's see, that's a really good question. So I think that when I started to understand that what leadership really was about helping people get the best out of themselves. So my first leadership experience, I had two people. It was a very small team, and one person's home burned down, and the other person had a sister that was battling a mental health crisis in a completely different country. And I realized, oh, as a leader, not only do I have to get the results for the company, but I've got to help these two people navigate these very personal situations, and to recognize that as a leader, I had the power to kind of bring in the resources of the company and help them as best we could, get them extra time off, get them extra money, find them a place to stay. I mean, that was when I realized, oh, okay, this is much bigger than I even realized, and something that I really wanted to be a part of.
Do you think that's a common train of thought for a lot of leaders? I'm going to be honest. I do. That's an unusual way to think about the whole person
Yes.
at a job.
Maybe not. You know, a lot of what I think about leadership is informed by watching my father, who was enlisted in the military and, you know, led teams. And I remember him really saying, you know, the leaders do the hard things, the leaders put their people first. I very distinctly remember when we were living in Germany that we didn't go home for Christmas. We let the young soldiers with the young families go home for Christmas. And as the leader, my mom and I were in the kitchen cooking lasagna for, you know, 15 single soldiers and making stockings for them, because my dad was the leader of this group and we were there to serve them. So that has informed my kind of leadership stance and really how I view it. And my guess is maybe that's atypical.
That's a wonderful influence,
Yes.
right? Like
Yeah,
reflecting
absolutely.
wise. Mm-hmm. So how did you get to Knoxville?
So my husband, we just married, and he got a postdoctoral position at Oak Ridge National Lab, and I was working for Alcoa in Pittsburgh, and they had a location here in Knoxville. So they relocated me. They, in fact, said, "You'll be the first PhD to leave the research center to work at a production facility, but if that's what you want to do, Angelique, go ahead." And so that's what I did, and I loved it. I mean, it wasn't exactly the right fit for my skill set, because it was, you know, laboratory, and this was absolutely not the laboratory. But to get that firsthand understanding of what it was really like to actually do the work of, like, the processes that I was trying to improve in the lab, to see what it was really like for the workers on the floor to actually try to implement these things, was really helpful for me, and really made me a much better researcher and a better leader, to really understand exactly what it was going to take to actually do the things.
So you've worked in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
you've worked in Pittsburgh, and now Knoxville.
Mm-hmm.
Being a leader, do you have to shift your leadership style due to the location and the people? Because everybody's different, communities are different, the way we perceive things are different.
Right.
Do you have to shift your leadership skills dependent upon the location?
Yeah, absolutely. In particular, I think the way that I communicate, not only language differences, but really understanding, okay, this group, this team maybe is more open, they're more social, they want to not just hear me talk about work all the time, they want to hear me talk about my personal life. So there's, in particular, I led a team in Brazil who was very much like that. They really wanted to know, you know, everything about me.
Yeah.
And then there are other teams that were a little bit more, you know, let's just focus on the work. So really trying to understand early on, just kind of getting to listen to them, hear what they're talking about, what their concerns are, and then trying to match that is just something that I think really all leaders need to do. And certainly when you're working across geographies, sometimes those differences can be a little bit bigger than if you're just working within teams that might be locally.
So let's talk about the big shift to working for yourself, and it's huge to pivot outside of what you know and what you've been trained to do, and you've gone to college for it, but to pivot outside of that and say, you know, I'm going to start my own company. Talk about the early days.
So the early days were terrifying. I really had an identity crisis, because I had spent 20 years trying to get to the top of the ladder in corporate. and had kind of finally reached this chief innovation officer role that I had been striving for. And to get there and realize, okay, maybe this isn't exactly what I'm here for. Maybe I can have a bigger impact in a different way. So that was the first realization. But so I knew I wanted to start my own business and I knew I wanted to do these things, but I really struggled with, well, who am I now? I went from being a chief innovation officer of a global firm to now, like, I'm just a speaker, or I'm just this woman who wrote a book. I really fell to kind of the trappings of the title and all of these things that go along with it. And so I really struggled with, well, who am I now? And then, of course, there's how do you actually do it? Like, how do you actually go from...
in a practical sense.
In a very practical sense. And I remember the first time it really hit me, somebody asked me to speak, and the first time I ever got paid to speak. This was great. So I did it, I gave the presentation, everybody loved it, and then a week later she said, you know, Dr. Adams, can you send us an invoice? And I was like, oh yeah, you've got to do that, don't you?
Oh, wow. Right.
And so of course you can Google invoice and you can figure out how to do it, but just the thought never crossed my mind that there was an additional transaction that of course I had never been a part of, having been inside a larger organization. And so that was when the realization hit that, oh, okay, yeah, that's right. This is a business and there's a whole bunch of things that I tactically just need to learn how to do. So that was the second part. And then I think the third part that was maybe a little tough for me was really getting comfortable with actually doing the kind of things we're doing right now, which is being publicly facing. So my entire career I've been behind the scenes.
Because you're an introvert is what I read somewhere.
Yes,
I was like, I don't believe that, but you're an introvert.
It is true. But I've always been behind the scenes. And so there'd be salespeople who were talking to customers or marketing people. You know, I would make the products and my teams would do the things, but I never had to actually, be publicly facing. So to find a way to be comfortable with that, took probably a year to 18 months before it was sort of like, okay, I can do this now.
Oh, I love this. So tell me exactly, so Angelique Adams Media Solutions, what is that? What do you do for companies?
Yes, so organizations hire me to do leadership training for their scientists and engineers. And so I do that through a couple of different ways. I do live training, so a workshop style activity, or I do group coaching, which is typically 90 days or so. We'll bring in a group and we do some training and then some coaching. And then I do private one-on-one coaching as well.
How hard is it to get, because scientists are numbers and math, so I'm married to one, so I can talk about you all.
Yes.
But sometimes it's hard, there's that personality portion that has to be linked to getting the message across, like this is our product, this is what we can do, that may be missing. So do you have to help develop some of that? Or is it more just planning and strategy?
I think that what I really focus on is helping people who want to be seen as leaders understand how to do that. So the people that come to me know that they are struggling with being seen as leaders. And they're already coming to me knowing that they have these challenges. They've been trying things, they're not working. Maybe they've even tried other leadership training, it's not worked. And they're like, okay, you're one of us and you have done it. So help us figure out how to get there. And so my approach is very much, it's a science and engineering focused approach. So I can meet them exactly where they are and talk about, okay, I know you're communicating this way. This is the way it's being perceived by senior leaders. Here's the path to kind of get out of your comfort zone and change your behavior to move closer to where you want to be. And that is typically very well received because I'm meeting the technical people where they are.
That. Let's talk about your focus on women. You wrote a book.
Yes.
Tell me about your book.
It was just a bucket list thing, actually. So when I was getting my executive MBA at MIT, some of my classmates were sort of like, you've had this really interesting work history. I mean, the number of times that I've been in places where there weren't even women's restrooms and I had to have a guard stand in front of me, stand in front of the door. It's numerous and comical, actually, considering, where we are at this day and age. Yes.
Right. I need you to have wrinkles and whole gray hair because...
no, I'm in my 40s and this is still something that happens. So like, you should talk about your experience. And I put it in the back of my mind and thought, maybe not. But then actually COVID hit and, I had been traveling over 50% of my time up until then, but then there was no travel. So I had technically some time on my hands and I kind of revisited the topic a little bit and decided to write the book. and it did way better than I ever could have expected. It was, it was a #1 on Amazon in its category for a short period of time.
Right.
Yeah, it was very exciting. And that was part of what had me think, okay, well, maybe there's actually a market for what I'm teaching, and use that as kind of an early indicator for starting the business.
Oh my gosh, that's wonderful. What do you do on your free time? What's your hobby?
My hobby is service. So I serve on the board of several nonprofits, and that's really where I spend my time when I'm not driving my kids around to all their stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so I saw your connection to the Boys and Girls Club.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, surely she's going to be connected to like a million STEM groups. But you're connected with the Boys and Girls Club. How did you choose that for your board participation?
Yeah, so actually it was, Alcoa was placing emerging women leaders on boards. And so they gave me an opportunity to join a board, and there were several that at the time, Alcoa used to have a really big presence here, and so there were several organizations that they were participating in. And so the Boys and Girls Clubs was one of the opportunities, and I remember doing a tour. And at the time, my kids, were doing after school care, and I just thought, wow, I cannot believe just the high level quality service that is being offered, at a much lower price point to communities that really need it. And I just decided I wanted to be a part of it. So that was probably back in 2014 was when I really started. And then I really not only just really love the organization, and now I've been with them, and I'm the chair-elect, so I'll become the chairman of the board soon. Love that organization, but nonprofit board service was really something that I didn't realize was going to be so important to me. So I'm on the board of several nonprofits, and just this idea of I can use these same skills that I learned in college, that I've learned through corporate, and apply them to communities and to causes that I really care about and actually help, was just something that I found very fulfilling.
I love to ask successful people, what's one thing you wish you would have done differently throughout your career? Because we always talk about, like, you're accomplished, but tell me something where you go, now, I hate I did that.
Oh, wow, that's a really good question. I probably would have pivoted on my own faster if I really had thought about it and had the confidence to try to go out on my own. Just because I'm so much happier now doing what I'm doing now. As I said earlier, I spent so much time trying to claw my way to the top of this corporate ladder, only to kind of get at the top and realize, oh, I don't actually like it up here.
Right, this is it?
Yeah. So I wouldn't call it wasted time by any means, because I learned so much, and a lot of what I've learned even in those last 18 months to 2 years when I was thinking about the transition are a lot of experiences that I can help my clients with. But I didn't have the confidence then at all to even consider doing anything other than stay on the track I was on.
Do you ever have a crazy interaction being a woman, minority, working in STEM? There's got to be something over a glass of wine you talked to your husband about, and you said, I can't believe this happened at work.
Well, I got an opportunity to lead a project in Saudi Arabia, and at the time women weren't allowed, and so I have the distinction of having a special sort of permission slip from a high-level Saudi Arabian official to allow me to enter a facility where I was leading a multi-million-dollar project. And I took a picture of this because I knew it was going to be relevant, but they cleaned a bathroom and put a sticker on it and said, reserved for lady visitor. And it was like, that's where you're going to go for the week.
Reserved for lady visitor.
Reserved for lady visitor, yes. So, I mean, that's a story that, yeah, I will be telling my grandkids.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you ever wonder, like, where we would be right now if women had had the opportunity earlier to jump into all these fields? I mean, just think about, it wasn't that long ago.
Right, yeah. I mean, I think that women would have really contributed to the field, of course, and also have more opportunity to have careers that they loved. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What happens next? What's the big vision?
The big vision, really to just keep growing my business. I mean, just to keep doing what I'm doing. Again, focusing on the scientists and engineers. And I mean, I really have this idea that if more scientists and engineers who really understood sort of the complexities of some of the most biggest challenges that we have in the world could have a seat at the leadership table, that the world would be a better place. So that's my vision. And so I'm just like, whatever I can do to make that happen, that's what I'm working on.
Why Knoxville? Why stay here so long? You're not from here. You can take this business is thriving. You can go anywhere. Why
Right.
East Tennessee?
Well, you know, we really made this our home. You know, I've moved around every 3 years. We've been here almost 20 years. You know, my husband continues to work at Oak Ridge National Lab. It's really a place that he's thrived. I love it here. Now, you know, I was in a corporate role for so long and moved around so long. I really don't feel like it wasn't until I started my own business that I lived in Knoxville. It's like really my home, and I'm finding, you know, my tribe and my community, and I really think it's just an amazing place.
You know, your residency at UT, working at the Tickle College. What advice do you give to young scientists who are getting ready to, you know, take that next step after college into these fields?
Really to focus on building their network, meet with alumni who are just absolutely thrilled to help, you know, help young students and in their careers, to really meet people, build your network, continue to build it. I like to use LinkedIn as a great social media platform for building your professional network, and I'm always telling students to do that, because you never know who can help them, you know, help you with your next role or give you some good advice.
Wait, now what do I need to be doing differently on LinkedIn?
What do you need to be doing?
What do I need to be doing? What are we telling folks? Post more or just show about their day? What are you doing?
So well, you know, I use LinkedIn for marketing my business. So I post a lot. I post almost daily, you know, thought leadership, you know, my ideas about leadership to attract people to want to hire me. But apart from that, if you're not in that role, I used it a lot when I was a leader. When I was actually a leader inside of a company, I would use that to amplify my staff, because they're on LinkedIn saying, hey, look what I did, or I'm so proud I did this. And, you know, so I could go in and say, oh, you know, I'm so proud of you and congratulations and things like that. So I could amplify it both inside work, but then also on this social media platform. And then I think really just, it's a great way also to build your network. So if you've got people that you're interested in maybe connecting with, if you can, you know, like and comment on their posts, then they notice you, and then you can send them a message and say, hey, you know, would you be interested in meeting with me? And so I think that there's multiple ways you can use it.
I just got you all some free advice. You're welcome. You didn't have to pay a consulting fee for that. That was fantastic. Are you interested in having your kids go into STEM as well? Do you have that type of focus, or is it kind of like?
We don't have that focus. You know, my husband and I are both PhD engineers, so it's a little bit just there. It's in the house, but we have really actually tried very hard to give them as many well-rounded opportunities as we can. And my husband's from a big family, and so many of his siblings are in very different fields, and so we're like, can you kind of help balance them out a little bit, because we don't really know anything else.
Yes.
STEM.
Pick up a paintbrush.
Right, exactly. But very highly likely that they're both going to be in STEM. They're both oriented that way and in STEM-related clubs and things like that. But we're trying not to force the issue.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Are you proud of yourself?
Oh, yes, I am very proud of myself. Yeah. I think that, you know, 16-year-old Angelique would not have envisioned any of this at all. And so, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You are the person I've wanted to interview for a while, so thank you so much. I've been seeing you around, and I love your influence in what you're doing. So, Dr. Angelique Adams, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.